Hello, today I'm going to talk about how you, a game developer, can make money while making your games. If this sounds interesting and you want to learn more, then stick around. The state of the game development industry is changing all the time. It's complex and there are more options out there for you to be able to make money for yourself or your studio than there were even 5 years ago. I'm sure in another 5 years there'll be more ways for you to make money or new ways to make money, and I'll do a video as and when that happens. But until then, let's get stuck into the list. There are a number of ways you can make money while making games, and one of them is freelancing yourself, all the skills that you've attained. Now, the number of ways you can do this is by going to websites like Fiverr or Upwork, where you advertise yourself and the skills that you provide and the projects that you're willing to take on and the costs for those services for anyone that's willing to take on a contractor. This service has its pros and cons, namely that you can determine and advertise your going rate for the service that you provide, but you are limited by the volume of people that are going onto these websites and looking for freelancers. So if the world goes to hell and there's a pandemic, there might be less of a chance that there are people out there looking for freelancers to develop assets or a game for them. Another version of freelancing yourself is by taking assets that you've worked on and selling them yourself. Developers usually package their 2D or 3D assets, their animation, the standard feature functionality, plugins or any audio assets that they have, and they sell them on asset stores like Unity or Unreal, or they can sell it on their own websites. Another way game developers make money for themselves while in development is by creating a course on a subject matter which they feel that they're experts in and that they can teach other developers how to be proficient in for their games. There are a number of these platforms, namely Udemy, Teachable, lynda.com. If this is the route that you're going to take, you should assess the cost split between yourself and the websites and choose the right one for you. Create your course and then cost it effectively, which adds the most value to the person who's purchasing the course and will give you enough revenue to make it worthwhile to have created in the first place. All that's left is to market that course, but that's a topic for another video. A third way to make money while making your games is to loop advertisements into any existing games that you have within your portfolio. This can be a time-consuming and sometimes thankless procedure, and it only works in volume. So if you have a game that is highly successful and there's a lot of people playing it, you can potentially get more money out of it by including any advertisements which will leverage the player base that you currently have. As an example, per 1,000 views of a 30-second video within your game can generate anywhere from $1 to $4. So you see where the value comes in if you have tens of thousands of people playing your game on a consistent basis and they're viewing ads 5, 6, 7 times at each playthrough. This is all based on a number of metrics, which I won't go into in this video. I'll make another video about it, but a simple Google search will help you teach you everything that you need to know about it if you're considering getting into it. This is a tactic that freemium and free-to-play games within the mobile market use to generate extra revenue from a player consistently playing their games by creating highly addictive gameplay loops. Another way of making money in your existing games is by forming partnerships and being sponsored by third parties. This could range anywhere from the main character always drinking a can of Coke or there being a Krispy Kreme building in the background. This is another way and a relatively easy way that you can make money with a sponsor. The terms of these ads always vary and are on a case-by-case basis. A fourth way that you can make money while making your game, and we all knew it was coming, it is crowdfunding. Creating a crowdfunding campaign for your game these days is much more difficult than it was 5 years ago when games were getting $1 million to be developed. Now, crowdfunding has fallen out of favor with the consumer, the players, who are taking on the added risk of giving their money over to a developer that may or may not complete and finish and release the game. There have been a number of cases where this has happened and the market has woken up to it, and it is much more difficult now to get a significant amount of funding for your game. These days, studios use crowdfunding as more of a proof of concept to generate an audience for themselves and to draw in any other forms of investment that they can for their game. So they tend to ask for less than they actually need for the development of the game to be seen as a success on the platform. If crowdfunding is something that you're seriously considering, then there are a number of ways you can go about it. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Fig, and if you are looking for more personal and steady form of income, then Patreon is something to consider as well. Another way to make money while making your game is to consider pre-purchases of your game or early access. These days, it is much rarer for an indie game to get any pre-sales for their game unless they've done a huge amount of marketing leading up to it, which is why they tend to enter early access more often than not. The reason indie games go into early access more than they do pre-sales is because they aren't a big developer and they don't have a huge back catalog of games, which is their social proof. And they're not backed by huge publishers which do big marketing campaigns and get these games out. There's not a huge audience of people waiting for this game to be released. The value proposition is too low and sometimes it's undeserved as an indie developer. And if you expect to get pre-sales in that case, then it's just not going to happen. This is another situation where crowdfunding has burned consumers and there's a higher level of precaution when it comes to handing over their money for a product that may or doesn't exist yet. It takes a level of faith and trust within a developer in a game before a person is ready to hand over their money for it. And if there isn't enough there for someone to be able to trust that developer, then they're not going to spend the money before the game's out yet. So only go with this option if you've got the clout to, if you've got the back catalog, or if you've done the marketing work to have built an audience that is willing to give you their money before the game's released. You can also make money by creating merchandise from your intellectual property. You can leverage your characters, your art, your game logos, whatever it is. You can create t-shirts, you can create mugs, you can create plushies and toys. Whatever it is that you think is going to appeal to your audience, you can create merchandise so that you can partner with a number of websites out there and make money from your game without having to have sold your game or on existing games that you already have with an existing player base. However you decide to go about this and whatever you merchandise is all individual, as it is individual towards what's suitable for you and your game and your brand. Which leads me on to my next point. You can also market your brand or create merchandise for your brand, your studio name, or yourself. Whatever you believe is worth advertising. EA makes big t-shirts with their logo on it. Twitch makes anything purple with their logo on it. If you have some brand recognition, then you can create merchandise which will both be beneficial for yourself, as it will get your brand, your market, your name out there, and you will make money out of the people buying these things. It's a win-win for you because you get money and free brand recognition, and a fan gets to wear some memorabilia of yours, which they can wear with some pride. A risky way to make money for yourself while making your games is to sign with a publisher or an investor. Now, I mentioned these guys in the same point because the benefit to you results in the same thing, and that is by funding your game's development. But they are vastly different parties and they are after different outcomes. An investor is looking for a significant percentage on either your intellectual property or your studio, whichever one they deem to be more profitable. They tend to fund projects based on the business case presented and the return on investment that they can achieve by leveraging you, your skills, and by the growth of your studio at the end of the day. Doing a deal like this will fund your development, but you're sacrificing the revenue that you're going to be generating once the game is released. That's the risk you take. A game publisher will finance the game's development, will handle the marketing, will manage the release, and will get a return on the sales that the game generates once it's released. It sounds like a good deal, but there are a lot of publishers out there, and there's a lot of indie publishers out there, and the terms are not the same, and you can potentially be duped out of the revenues within your game, you can be duped out of the intellectual property within your game. So if you are considering going down these routes with these parties, then get yourself a lawyer. So guys, if you can step away from this video with a few new ways to make money while you're making your games, then hit subscribe and hit like. It really does help the channel. And if you know of any other developers that are struggling financially to fund their development, then share this video with them. I think it'd really help them too. Also, I'm really curious, what strategies have you guys used to make money while making games? Post your responses in the comments below so we can all learn from each other. Considering I'm filming this during the Ludum Dare, next week I'm going to talk about how to best develop your game during a game jam. So if that sounds interesting to you, hit the subscribe and the bell to stay tuned for next week.